rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
All right, welcome to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. We are your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. Guys, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcasts. We're on Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. If you go to YouTube and Rumble, you like to watch the video as well as the audio, we ask, obviously, that you subscribe, that you rate, and you review it. Give us a 5. Give us the highest number possible. That'll help us to continue to climb the charts or more, so more people can see our videos. We really appreciate that. All things social media at The Carl Jackson Show. That is at The Carl Jackson Show. Also, today's show is brought to you by MyPillow.com. Mike Lindell has built a fabulous company in MyPillow. All right, American jobs, American manufacturing. Exclusive to my listeners, we have the new MyPillow 2.0 buy one, get one free special available. All you have to do is go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener square at the top of the page, and enter my name, Carl, C-A-R-L. Again, MyPillow.com, enter the promo code Carl, C-A-R-L. If you prefer, you can give them a call at 800-858-0263. All of Mike's products come with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. You can peruse the entire website. There are deals up to over 60% off if you just use my name. But take advantage of this new MyPillow 2.0. You're going to love it. Same patented adjustable feel, but now it's softer, smoother, and cooler with the new temperature regulating thread. MyPillow.com, promo code Carl, American jobs, American manufacturing, and a great night's rest. All right, guys, we're going to stay tuned for some quick program messaging. We'll be right back with the podcast. All right, welcome back. Listen, here's what I want to dive into today. I want to dive into this GOP debate that is coming quickly approaching. We're going to talk about that, some of the things that are happening as we lead up to that with the candidates. But before I do that, I do want to make mention of a lot of headlines that are in the news today. Typically, I do, or I try to do Jackson's 5 when I can. However, this is like Jackson's 10, not quite, but I do want to go through some stories. Some I wasn't so sure whether or not I should even mention. Obviously, the cocaine in the White House issue is still a big deal. First, the cocaine was found, I think they said in the library, the White House library, which has limited access, and then it's gone a couple of different places now. Supposedly, the cocaine was found in someplace where apparently there's a lot of foot traffic, so on, et cetera. But everybody knows that it's Hunter's cocaine. We all know that, right? It's all Hunter's cocaine. And what I say to that is stop the gaslighting in 2024. I'd rather they come out and admit, although I know that they can't since Hunter Biden just got a sweetheart deal. And by the way, another story is majority of potential voters believe Hunter Biden received special treatment in the plea deal. That does not bode well for the Bidens. Only over 55% of voters surveyed in a Rasmussen survey said that they feel as though Biden got special treatment. That doesn't bode well. So obviously, if this story about cocaine hits, especially since he just copped a plea deal, he could lose his plea deal and be in serious trouble. Obviously, the White House doesn't want that to happen. But I'll be honest with you. I'd rather they just say, listen, he screwed up. He messed up. He failed. People that have addictions, it happens. They fall. Instead of gaslighting us. I'm tired of just lying straight to our faces. So that's one of the stories. I've just entered a second one, if you will, a headline where the majority of voters believe, man, this guy got a sweetheart deal. That is not good for the White House. You know, this story, I think it's a deeply personal story headline. I wasn't going to touch on it, but it's important. The White House still silent on Biden not acknowledging his 7th grandchild. And at first, I'm like thinking, this is cruel. This is evil. These people are mean. But it is indicative of who the man in the White House is. All right. If that man does not care about his granddaughter, why would he care about you, the voter? So I'll just leave that at that. Another thing in the headlines. You have Xi Jinping actually warned Putin against using nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Apparently, this occurred in March as they met together for, and it was the first time Z had kind of been out of China since that zero COVID policy lockdown. So he warned Putin not to use his nukes, and apparently it's worked at least thus far. So we'll see what happens with that. But that's interesting news coming out. KGP, the podium propagandist, states that the White House disagrees with the judge censoring social media users. And listen, social media users, this is a false narrative. What the judge censored and what the judge forbade was that the federal government would use social media and social media, big tech, in order to censor their political opponents, which is exactly what happened in the 2020 election and afterwards during the COVID lockdowns, where people were not allowed to have robust debate. And that is a complete violation of our First Amendment. But now you know where the White House stands when it comes to the First Amendment. They have to be absolutely terrified of this. Philadelphia shooter, we will get into this story briefly, was arrested. Dude dressing as a woman by the name of Kim Brady Carriker. I can't even pronounce the name, Carriker. Anyway, the man accused of fatally shooting 5 men and injuring 2 children in Philadelphia earlier this week has been charged with 5 counts of murder. The 40-year-old alleged shooter is also facing charges of attempted murder, reckless endangerment, aggravated assault, and carrying a firearm without valid permit. He is being held without bail. Carriker, who wore a bulletproof vest and was armed with a rifle, pistol, extra magazines, and a police scanner when he allegedly shot 4 men on a street in the Kingsessing neighborhood. He fired at least 50 rounds at the scene. He allegedly chased and killed the 5th man inside of a home. Wow. Wow, that's insane. A 2-year-old boy was shot 4 times in the legs. A 13-year-old boy also sustained gunshot wounds to his legs. Police said police chased the shooter for several blocks as he shot at them before he ultimately surrendered in an alley, according to authorities. If he was shooting at them, why is he not dead? Honestly, I'm so sick and tired of this. Now they'll spend tons of time wasting times in the court system, wasting time with this guy going to jail. By the way, according to some local reports, they are referring to this dude as they, them. This is insane. We cannot keep playing this pronoun game. It's absolutely insane, and it is absolutely wacky. All right. Just another headline. Russia floats prisoner swap for Ivan Gershkovich. Ivan Gershkovich is the Wall Street Journal reporter that was arrested in Russia with no cause. They said he was a spy, like they always do, just punking Joe Biden. But listen, it's sad. But again, they're offering a prisoner swap, no telling who. I don't know who they want in exchange for the Wall Street journalist. But suffice it to say, Joe Biden would give up the store in order to get the headline. He will probably do it, I suspect, closer to the election of 2024, assuming he will be the nominee. And I do believe that he will be the nominee, but then he'll be replaced as the nominee, as I've offered several ways in which that can happen. Also, just real quick, this is a lot of headlines, I know, but really important. Fed sees a mild recession ahead. Need for more interest rate hikes. No signs of summer sales rebound for beleaguered Bud Light. Bud Light still suffering. And I figured that would be the test. How would people react heading into the summer? Independence Day, so on, et cetera. People are going to be drinking a lot of beer. Apparently, it's not going over well. Disney stock downgraded over streaming. Theme park growth fears. So Disney not doing well. If Disney would cater to traditional families and children like they used to, instead of catering to social justice warriors and very small and loud vocal groups, Disney would soar again. People love fantasy. People love inspiration. People love the stories that Disney used to make without getting all political. If they would turn that ship around, I guarantee you their stock would soar. I mean, I hate to see them go down like this, but they need to go down. These people are sexualizing children, so I say screw Disney for the time being. Okay, now moving on. I want to play this video real quick. This is of I don't even know. Let me get the description, because Julio Rosas initially posted this video online. Let me see if I can find it. At a press conference about the recent mass shooting in Philadelphia that I made mention of. That's another thing I forgot to mention. The murderer in Philadelphia, the guy that murdered 5 people and pretends like he's a woman or dresses as a woman, is a BLM activist. He's a BLM activist. And so this gentleman at a press conference, I don't know if he was representing the family or whatever, but he said that the media, the conservative media, is committing verbal violence by sharing photos of the shooter wearing women's clothing because he was not really trans, but the language, spewed out by the right is dangerous. It is violent. By the way, have we ever got the manifesto of that trans shooter? Was that Tennessee? We ever get that manifesto? No word on that yet, huh? Yeah, that's what I figured. Anyway, let's go ahead and roll this video, por favor, Gabe, and I'm going to react to it. And then I want to talk about the upcoming GOP debate set for August, I believe, 23rd now.
All as a city in our prayers. I want to discuss very briefly, because there is a nasty, violent, in terms of verbal and written words, spewed by the conservative press regarding the shooter. There are certain pictures that are circulating. Some of you may be aware of those pictures. Have the shooter in one picture as male and other pictures dressed in female attire or female outfits. They have used those pictures to attack trans people, and particularly trans women of color, which are extremely vulnerable to violence in our community. I want to set the record straight, because language is extremely important when we're talking about anything dealing with violence in trans community. The suspect or the shooter has not identified themselves as trans. They have only identified themselves as male. And that's the language that will be used until further developments, if they change that type of language. But the language that is spewed out by the conservative press is violent and is dangerous, and is targeting trans women of color. It's rallying the community to be violent. And we're better than that. We're better than that. We have our trans women and our trans men living in these communities, working, thriving in the communities. They are not killers. They are the most vulnerable to violence. They want to live their lives, and they have every right to do so. And we will not allow conservative bigots to use that.
I want you to understand what's happening with the left. Now, and this guy was a BLM supporter. Antifa, BLM, these people have been very violent. We recall the George Floyd riots of 2020, right? So these people have been violent. Remember what the left does. The left creates victim groups. The left creates victim groups. This is very important to understand, because what the left is creating are their own brown shirts, essentially. They are creating the thugs that will go out and do harm against the rest of us. All right, so let's follow the logic of this. I'm gonna use this word loosely here, of this gentleman that gave the press conference. All right. So apparently, verbal and written columns addressing a murderer and showcasing who the murderer is, that's violent. But murdering 5 people, chasing one gentleman down inside of a house, executing him, and shooting 2 kids, we shouldn't focus on that. That's not violent, right? This is absolutely insane. So the murderer isn't violent, but our verbal and written communication about the murderer is violence. You see why we can't take these people seriously, and we need to defeat them at the ballot box? The guy was a psycho killer, evil killer. And by the way, the guy that gave the press conference, aren't his words violent? Violent? If we're talking about words, this guy said that we were attacking trans women of color. So if people are already suffering with a mental disorder and they believe the words of this guy that gave the press conference, aren't we almost assured that a person as crazy and evil as the guy that murdered 5 people might come after us as conservatives? So this guy needs to make up his mind. But essentially what's happening, the left is creating brown shirts and they're projecting what they're doing onto the conservative movement. They're the ones that are violent. I want you to name me the Republican. I want you to name me the conservative. I want you to name me the Christian that has gone out and assassinated 5 people in the middle of the street. Name them. I'm waiting. Yeah, exactly what I thought. This guy's a clown. This whole people buying into this nonsense are clowns, in my opinion. And it's time to we can't buy into this woke nonsense. Anyway, moving on from that. All right, let me get to the issue of the day. Let's get to the issue of the day. All right, so the first GOP debate is fast approaching, and some people are concerned that it's going to be a wreck. I am not. I'll explain, why people might feel that way, but why I believe that is incorrect. So the first GOP primary debate, and hat tip, man, I forget who this was from, but the title is the first GOP debate is at risk of losing its draw. I can't remember if this is the Hill. It was more of a rag on the left. But anyway, it's an interesting column. So I just want to go through it and talk through it. So that you understand what's going on leading up, or you are informed about what's going on leading up to the first debate. I know that you understand the ins and outs of politics if you're listening to this podcast. By the way, again, please subscribe to this podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. Please ask your friends, share it with your friends, share it with your neighbors, share it with your family. Even if they hate me, ask them to check it out. We would certainly appreciate that. All things social media at The Carl Jackson Show. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, True Social Getter. Wherever I am on social media at The Carl Jackson Show is where you can find me. All right, so the first GOP primary debate looks like it's headed towards a less crowded field. So we'll have to see what happens due to the RNC's somewhat stringent rules. I didn't think they were that bad, but apparently they are shaping up to be pretty stringent for some of the people that haven't qualified thus far. So we'll talk about the people that didn't. I think one of the things to watch for, and they say, the people that wrote this column say basically that, this first GOP debate is at risk of losing its draw, its excitement, its viewership, if you will. I don't necessarily believe that's the case. Now, we'll get into Trump is threatening to pull out or not go at all. We'll talk about that. Apparently, there's rumors that DeSantis is contemplating that. If they do, I think that'll be a disaster for both. I'll explain why. But I think if the primary debate does happen with some of the bigger names, I really think the spot to watch out for is who rises up as the alternative, if you will, to Trump, or the second place guy. Ron DeSantis, in my opinion, he is a great governor. And I reject the notion from some of my conservative homeboys across, across the conservative spectrum, many articles that I've written, many that I've read, many headlines that I've seen. I reject the notion that Ron DeSantis wouldn't be a great president. I would say this. I believe, with all sincerity, this isn't me hating on Trump. This isn't me just kissing Ron DeSantis's butt. This is me just telling you straight out. When it comes to legislation, the guy is a freaking juggernaut. He would be an amazing president. There's no doubt about it. All these people, he's not ready. That's total BS. That's honestly, that's just people emoting. I'm one of these people. I feel like I get emotional about a candidate for a split sec. And then I'm like, okay, what is this person's policies? Because ultimately I'm like, when they're out of office, I want to make sure that I'm more free than when they came into office. So that's my modus operandi. That's the way that I function. But the way I think DeSantis would be an amazing president if he were to become president. I'm not sure that he will, because most people are worried about charisma. And charisma is important in politics. Let's face it, it's showbiz, essentially, nowadays, especially with social media, television. Politics is also showbiz. It isn't just policy. As much as I wish it were, It isn't just policy. Case in point, DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy. Listen, DeSantis is a guy that has already delivered the goods, just like Trump has delivered the goods on the national level. Vivek Ramaswamy has some excellent ideas, some amazing ideas. Many of his ideas are the same as DeSantis and Trump. He's running on being Trump 2.0, but he has some different ideas about the age of voting, military, so on, etc. But whenever he speaks, he's vibrant, he's exciting, he's very thorough. His communication skills are the best, frankly, that I can recall seeing. All right. I mean, I've been watching politics for a long time. This guy just has a natural inclination to be able to talk policy, but make it inviting. That is huge. And so I would be looking at, does that hurt DeSantis? You know what I mean? Because eventually what has to happen if DeSantis is to stand a shot, I know his polls are stagnant now, but looking back, Trump and Cruz were at 5 and 6% at this point last year, at this point in 2015, headed into, a year before, almost a year out of the primaries. And then in the primaries, they came in 1 and 2, and then Trump just gained momentum from there. So they were essentially not quite in last place, but they weren't setting pretty, and it totally flipped. Now, I know it's a little different. Trump was in then, he's in now, and now he's a known quantity. But the truth of the matter is there are a lot of people, as much as I love Trump, there are a lot of people that dislike him. So we got to see how it plays out. Right now, he's the odds-on favorite to be the nominee. But again, I don't take the polls seriously now. We have to see how the polls look heading in to the Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina primary. Right now, all of those favor Trump. But as we get closer, things may change. Hillary Clinton, I did not remember this until I heard this on the another show the other day, that Hillary Clinton, one day before the Iowa caucus, I don't remember if this was during the period of time that she ran against Trump or Barack Obama, but she was ahead by 22 points. 22 points. And she ended up losing that caucus to whomever her primary opponent was by 3 points. So that was a 25-point swing within one day. All right. So the polls don't necessarily tell us as much, I believe, as they used to, because so many people are on our cell phones, ballot harvesting. And I just don't think a lot of people answer polls, except the most focused voters. All right, so DeSantis and Vivek, I think, and if Larry Elder gets on, I think he would be amazing in a debate. Not sure if he's going to make it on. We'll talk about that. But if he does, I think he would be excellent as well. But he hasn't been able to gain the traction thus far. I hope he will, because I think he will be phenomenal on the stage, frankly. And I like Tim Scott, but I think he'll be better than Tim Scott. I'm not one that wants Tim Scott for president. I'm not going to lie to you. I love Tim Scott. I don't think he's ready to be president. That's one that I would say. But, I could be wrong, and I understand that people feel differently. Here's what the column goes on to say. The party's rigid donor criteria stands to limit the number of GOP candidates that debate in Milwaukee this August, and it's on August 23rd. Its polling requirements could trip up campaigners, too. Several candidates are openly mocking the RNC's idea of the loyalty pledge requirement to participate. And obviously, the leading candidate Donald Trump is downplaying the idea that he'll show up at all. His feeling is this, and I understand it. Trump is like, listen, I'm the leading candidate. I'm leading by a lot. Why would I show up and give these other candidates the opportunity to shoot their arrows at me to try to become the alternative to Trump, right? Why would I give them that? Why would I give them that opportunity? I'll explain to you in a second why frankly, I think that Trump should do it. I think it would be a mistake for him not to do this debate. He is thinking about this. Wait, I'm making sure. Let me just read this part. It says a stage that was once expected to be as sprawling as it was in the 2016 GOP primary could end up a slim down affair, with the long shots not qualifying and the front runner following through on his threats to boycott. And all the events could draw far fewer viewers than in past years and take on far less significance in altering the outcome of the campaign. I totally disagree with that. Well, not in total. If Donald Trump is there, obviously there are going to be fewer viewers. He's also talking about doing a different event on the same day. I don't think that'd be a good idea. I think he would draw a huge crowd. I think he would draw viewers, no doubt about it. But that would be Trump's most ardent supporters. And I just think it's too early in the polls to say that this race is as blown out as it actually is. So I think that would be, in my opinion, that would be a mistake on Trump's part. But then again, I'm not running for president. I do understand Trump's argument. Why would I subject myself to them attacking me? Because he's not president anymore. I love him. He's not president anymore. That's one of the reasons. And we, the people, should always be we, the people first, should consider we, the people first. So whatever Trump did that worked in 2016, 2017, 2018, we should hear about it. He should talk about it. But what changes have to be made to make sure that if he gets in again, he accomplishes more? Because right now, after he left office, government power is stronger than it ever has been. That's just a fact, Jack. Trump was the best president for his first 3 years. That last year under COVID, I hate to say it, but he, in my opinion, they had the Russia hoax, the Ukraine hoax, and then he fell for the Deborah Birx, Anthony Fauci hoax, and it cost him his presidency. And I believe it was rigged. But it would not have been able to be rigged if he had not been duped by Fauci and Birx. And we all know that that virus was new at the time, but Obama didn't shut down the government when Ebola and all those type of scares. They didn't shut it down. You never shut down the economy. You simply do not do it. And the left knew they had them. Here's what New Jersey Governor Christie has to say, as if you care. But here's what he says. I think for those people who don't make the debate stage, it's very hard for them to make the case for why they should stay in the race. And I suspect they will have trouble. They will have trouble raising money after that. And again, he hasn't met the threshold. Now, recall in 2015, there were so many candidates that the RNC had to create a kiddie debate, a kiddie table. And then if you rose to a certain threshold, anybody could get in, but you had to reach a certain threshold to get to the adult table, to get to the big boys table. Christie was able to do that the first time around. But this time, it's not even clear as to whether or not he would be able to get on the stage at all. But what the RNC is trying to do is weed out the field early on for anyone that doesn't have a serious chance of winning the nomination, or people that might just be interested in building their brand. Right. So you kind of want to weed those people out early. I get that after seeing what we saw in 2015 and 2016, so many people in the race. I didn't like the concept of two debates. And I do believe that we're in a situation where the nominee needs to be found as quickly as possible, whether that's Trump, whether that's DeSantis or someone else, because we need to aim all of our arrows at not just Joe Biden, but at the left and the Democrat policies that have destroyed this country, that is spiraling this country into a recession, that has caused all this anger and outrage and violence in blue cities and the like, the blatant, the weaponized DOJ, so on, et cetera. We need to be able to focus there as soon as possible. Now, again, I know that Trump doesn't want to give his opponents an inch to be able to fire at him. He also believes that the Fox News channel is biased against him. And I think that's been clear in some cases with Paul Ryan on the board. But here's what Fox News wants leading up into the election cycle. They want Trump on because Trump draws attention. he draws viewership. Fox News knows it. Every outlet knows it. That's why they want that's why they want Trump on. Trump said, and I quote, "Why would I let these people take shots at me? Because they're fighting for the American people." It's really as simple as that. They're fighting for the American people. That's the number one thing. But and then here's the other danger. Here's the other danger. I think Trump could draw a lot of attention and viewership, obviously, if he had a rally. Obviously, it would be a big, oh my God, Trump did this. He had a rally. He distracted from the GOP debate. You guys might not care about that, but I think a lot of independents and moderates would. And I'm not one that kiss the independents' butt and moderates' butts. I believe you need to persuade them. I don't think you need to weaken your stance. I think you need to better explain, or we need to better explain our stance as constitutionalists, why it matters, how it affects everyday average Americans, and the importance of the Constitution, our history, so on, etc. I don't think you capitulate to them. But being what it is, I think independents and moderates would be turned off by that, quite frankly, making it harder for Trump to win in a general election. And even if he is the nominee, even if DeSantis is the nominee, I'm not necessarily convinced that we can win unless people are excited to turn out, unless we make sure we got everything in place to go ballot versus ballot, because it's not necessarily candidate versus candidate anymore. That's what we learned in 2020, right? And in 2022 as well. You have the left going out and chasing ballots instead of chasing voters. That is a huge difference. So I believe that this would be a mistake for Trump. Big rally, that doesn't say anything about the general election. That just says the base is still with Trump, which is good because you have to have the base. But it doesn't say anything necessarily about the general election. And I'm not convinced that Trump could win. I think he could win the presidency. I don't think he can win the popular vote. And that might be the case with most of the people. I do believe a DeSantis could probably win the popular vote, but I'm not even sure about that. Just because so many people, the way the media has been just doggedly against conservatives, I think it's just hard to win the popular vote in general. And you see places like Michigan that are making it much easier for Democrats to win and Republicans to lose with the legislation they're passing. Here's another reason I think it's dangerous for Trump. If someone does really well, they could solidify themselves as the alternative to him. And so I think Trump being in debates, he handles debates well. I mean, he was able to crush people in debates, right? Even the smartest of the smart. I love Ted Cruz policies, but Ted Cruz did not have the charisma that Donald Trump does. He has a way of branding people and just getting his ideas out that like no one else has. I think the closest I've seen to that, and someone that I think is even better without using the names, is Vivek Ramaswamy. But Trump's idea of branding people, it's hard to beat. I don't always like it, but I got to admit it's hard to beat that. Once you're branded, it's really hard to be able to beat that. But here's another danger. If someone rises up and they become that alternative to Trump, he would have screwed himself. Because I do believe if someone were to get, which is not likely, but if someone were to get a one-on-one with Trump, they would give him a run for his money in the primary. So Trump has to consider that as well. It says here that Trump isn't the only candidate whose appearance on the debate stage is either unlikely or uncertain. There's other candidates that said they don't want to sign the RNC pledge either, that would back the candidate no matter who it is. But a lot of those people are somewhat no names, so to speak, and aren't looking like they'll get on stage in the first place. So those threats may not matter in the long run. But here are the candidates that so far at least have qualified for the debate. So far, campaigns for Trump: Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, Vivek Ramaswamy. These are the ones that have qualified so far. And you have to have 40,000 donors. The RNC says that figure must include at least 200 unique donors in 20 states, in each of 20 states. So 40,000 donors. All right. So 40,000 donors, and you get 200 unique donors in at least 20 states. Also, here's the interesting thing that DeSantis did. And I think this is very important to note. What DeSantis has to do at this point, because I think his biggest threat is Vivek Ramaswamy. I mean, at this point, I think that's DeSantis's biggest threat. I think DeSantis has the policy chops. I think he would be amazing. He does not have the charisma. All right, so he's going to have to try to figure that out. He's going to have to do more than just talk about policy. He's going to have to figure out how to become more likable. How is that? That's impossible to do. I don't think it is. I think you start explaining to people the whys. All right, here's why I support this policy. This is how it affects you. This is how it impacts you. When you make that connection with policy, I think that has an amazing effect on people, right? When you connect those dots, you don't have to have Trump charisma to do that. You don't have to have Vivek Ramaswamy charisma to do that. But I do think you have to be able to connect the dots. Here's something that DeSantis is trying to do. The people that have gotten in the race, and again, he got in too late, in my opinion, if he was going to make an early run at this thing, doesn't mean that he can't catch fire. And honestly, even with his polls being stagnant, if he has a good debate performance, then I believe that he just wants to stay in that second place. He's got to stay there. He's got to solidify himself as the alternative to Trump. If Vivek Ramaswamy comes in second or something like that and takes over, I think it's totally over for DeSantis. And again, I think this guy would be an amazing president, but his ability to campaign, which we saw in Florida, is he's just not a great campaigner, and that can impact him. So we could lose out on a guy that could be, at least potentially, because I don't think if he loses this time, I'm not convinced that he'll be able to win in the future, because there's going to be more people getting in the race then. You know, people got to consider that. So when people say, you know, Trump now and then DeSantis 8 years later, and listen, we're not guaranteed that. We're not even guaranteed that we can win 2024. All right. Didn't you watch 2020, 2022? I'm just being real with you. We are going to have to hustle our booties off to win 2024. I think we can do it. We just got to hustle. All right. But here's what DeSantis has done to Pence. It says here, last week, former Vice President Mike Pence brought in roughly $250,000 at a fundraiser in central Indiana. This according to his campaign. But the next day, allies of DeSantis announced a dueling fundraiser in Pence's backyard of Hamilton County, Indiana. But they said what raised eyebrows most was that the fundraiser would also be hosted by Bob Gran. Now, Bob Gran is an Indianapolis attorney and lobbyist whom Pence installed on the Trump-Pence inaugural committee and showered with attention and flights on Air Force Two during his vice presidency. So you have a fundraiser for Pence, or a lobbyist for Pence, or whom Pence installed himself with, now basically turning to run DeSantis. Now, you may say, oh, man, that's so net. Listen, this is politics. It's going to be hardball. If DeSantis is going to remain in the number 2 spot, he's got to start. He's not only got to do better campaigning, but he's got to try to knock out the competition, because what he needs in order to become the nominee is the Trump versus DeSantis matchup. That's what he needs. So that's what he's trying to do. At this point, it's possible that Pence isn't Trump, run DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, Vivek Ramaswamy. These are the only people that have guaranteed a spot on the debate stage so far. So we don't even know if Pence will be able to make it, because he hasn't met the threshold. There's the North Dakota governor, Doug Burgum, who's in. I didn't even know about this guy. I'll be honest with you. I heard about some governor, North Dakota, but apparently he's very wealthy. He's got $4 million of his own. Larry Elder is another lesser known candidate. But he said the RNC rigged the rules, and the RNC did rig the rules, and they made them much different, obviously, from 2015, because they didn't want to have 2 debates and all these people in. But I do believe that Larry Elder is a serious contender. I do hope that he will make it on stage, because I think he will talk about issues that nobody else will talk about. Well, Tim Scott will. No, Larry Elder is more libertarian or conservatarian than Tim Scott. I think Tim Scott has a real good story, and I could be wrong. Tim Scott could prove me wrong, but I don't know of any major ideas as of yet coming from Tim Scott. Larry Elder, the way I saw him campaign in California, absolutely amazing. He can give a stump speech. He can hit the issues, kind of like a Vivek Ramaswamy, and this guy has some good ideas. I think Tim Scott has the strong story. you have Larry Elder that has strong solutions on how to heal some of the poorer communities across the United States of America. And he wants to be able to talk about those issues and implement them into the Republican platform. So I hope he does succeed. Now, having said that, as I wrap up, the second quarter fundraising reports are still 2 weeks out as of yet. So we'll have a better idea of who's in or who's out. When it comes to the debate, we'll just have to wait and see. Some people that I did not mention that were not in the debate as of yet may be able to make it onto the stage. So we'll have to see. Now, Tim Scott the article did say that one of the things that Tim Scott is doing is he's announcing, and I quote, "I need your help to confirm my spot on the presidential debate stage." So it apparently Tim Scott's campaign isn't doing as well as he thought as well. And then you have the polling issue. There's another threshold that candidates have to meet when it comes to polling. When it comes to polling, the candidates must earn at least 1% support in 3 approved polls conducted after July 1, but before the deadline of August 21st. And again, that debate is on August 23rd. So these candidates have to meet at least 1% support in three polls. Very important, because a lot of candidates aren't getting that. One candidate argued, and I don't even know this guy, Perry Johnson. Apparently he's a Michigan businessman and presidential candidate. And his spokesperson came out and said, listen, the polling, we shouldn't go by national polling. And I actually agree with that. National polling, it's a joke. It's silly to follow that right now, but a lot of people do it. A lot of conservatives do it. It's fun. It means absolutely nothing. The only thing that means something are state polling. And even state polling, the numbers that they're polling are so low, I don't really take those seriously, but they are a good indication of where we're at. I think it's clear that Donald Trump is the front runner. Do I believe he's as far ahead as these polls say? I don't. But who knows? I could be wrong. I mean, maybe people just aren't speaking up, but they're not polling tons of people, which doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't bode well for polling, right now. But this guy makes an interesting point. He's like, listen, we should be polling the states in the first primaries, Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, see where people are polling there. And I do think that makes more sense because obviously those are going to be the first primaries. But this year's criteria for the RNC, I mean, it is causing a ruckus. It is causing a doozy. It's causing people to step their game up. And I don't necessarily believe that that's a bad thing. So you got to work hard, not just in the election season, but out of the election season in order to get so that we don't have tons of chaos. You see the Democrat Party completely shutting out their Biden's opposition, RFK Jr. And Williamson. They're not even having a debate. I believe that is completely anti-American. That is censorship, in my opinion, right? To not let your opponents have a say. If you have a challenger and you're the president, it's because you suck. All right. And people should be able to hear that argument. So, or I shouldn't say it's because you're stuck, but you have 2 opponents that are willing to challenge you. I think it's because you stink. Obviously, there's sometimes people challenge people and you're like, what are you doing? This isn't one of those cases. Everybody and their mother knows that Biden stinks, but because we're ideologues at this point, it seems like that people will continue to vote for Biden. Even if Biden had a 24 hours to live and it was announced, before the election, I think Democrats would still vote for the guy. That's just the way it is today. It's weird. It's crazy. Anyway, guys, listen, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Please don't forget to support the podcast by subscribing to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. Again, we're on YouTube and Rumble. If you'd like to view it, please subscribe there, rate and review us. Follow me on all things social media at The Carl Jackson Show. Until next time, don't grow weary doing good. God bless you.